So the new Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 229 is officially here from the beautiful humans over at TCB, and we've got a lot to break down, big twists, and this was in the fight between Gojo and Sukuna, and a lot of fraudulent allegations being tossed around, and I want to clean them all up in this video here. So if you haven't already, this chapter is going to be a fucking banger, but without further ado, let's just jump into the video and make sure you subscribe for that massive PP energy boost, and we're almost at 13,000 subscribers, which is kind of fucking crazy. So I want to issue a challenge to all of you. I want to see if we can get me to 14,000 subscribers after this video. What are you guys thinking about that? I think 1,000 subscribers within one video, I think that's kind of doable if you all just click that subscribe button. I think that'd be kind of gas. What are you saying? That's my challenge from me to you as the community. But this chapter opens up with Gojo having just had his nosebleed, and at the end of the last chapter, this man just simply wipes it off as if it is nothing. However, what I will say is JJK didn't draw this for a cliffhanger for absolutely no reason. There is no way. And we see that in this chapter, the Mahoraga does come into play at the end here, so I am pretty certain that that nosebleed that even Yuta is concerned about will come back around to bite us in the arse here. I'm absolutely certain of it. But Gojo simply wipes away that nosebleed and pops a domain expansion again, and I've seen a few people now starting to say that they're coming to dislike the amount of domain expansions happening within this fight, and I have to say that this fight is between the strongest in the verse. Of course, we are going to see a lot of domain expansions. It's the pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery, what were you expecting? And to then further drive home that point, a lot of people had this view when Hikari vs Kashimo was happening week to week, but now a good 90%, maybe even 99% of the fan base says Kashimo vs Hikari is one of the best fights, if not the best fight in the series. So yeah, I think that week to week devil is starting to come in and affect everyone's memories here, but I guarantee once this fight is over and done with, it will be a generational effort from Sensei JJK out there. I'm telling you right now. We get to see Angel, Hana, Yuji, and Kusakabe all talking about this domain being activated at the same time from both Gojo and Sukuna, and it also now confirms that Sukuna can restore his burnt out curse technique, which again, is that anyone's surprise? Because the man has been around a long time. So for me, it's not shocking that this dude is just like Gojo, and he can also just learn something from once and see it and activate it. But we see Shoko talking about Gojo, saying, let's not talk about Gojo as if he's on the ropes. If Sukuna is drawn into unlimited void, even for just a few seconds, he'll be incapacitated, and if he's able to destroy Malevolent Shrine, he will win. And I'll talk about this towards the end of the video and the chapter here, but we get this insane panel of Gojo's cursed energy around his fists, and we get this other panel of Gojo piecing Sukuna up inside of the domain. And I've talked about this briefly in the previous videos and streams and Discord voice calls and stuff like that, but Gojo really does have insanely good hand-to-hand combat and martial arts in almost every situation, even when Sukuna is got Gojo at a disadvantage. Like, you can go back and reread the chapters and try and do it with a non-biased view here. Even in times where Gojo is at a disadvantage, he is pushing Sukuna back in hand-to-hand respect. There are many hand-to-hand panels throughout this fight that has happened, and almost every one of them involves Gojo just blocking, deflecting, or making Sukuna miss everything that he does, and it's only marginal, but Gojo is the only one out of the two of them that has landed actual connections and punches throughout the fight here. But we see Gojo using an application of blue inside of the domain here against Sukuna to throw Sukuna into his own shrine, and then again pulling him back to carry on throwing hands with him, attempting to punch Sukuna into the stomach, but with Sukuna blocking it just in time. But there is this overwhelming barrage from Gojo that forces Sukuna's domain to crumble. And I'm not sure what or how it happens, but Sukuna comes out of the other side of this domain clash here, and he's got half of his face missing again. However, I would be willing to bet and theorize here that Gojo might have just used reds on Sukuna when he had him pinned against the floor. Sukuna having no hands free to block that attack and having both of his hands used to block Gojo's punch, he would have had to have taken that red attack head on. And Gojo having a hand free, you can see right here that he has two fingers in motion for Gojo right here, seemingly looking like he's about to use that technique. So this is my theory for it right here, and these are all very, very important details here for the upcoming chapters, which I will get into at the end here. But we get to see everyone reacting to Gojo's small victory here. here with Yuji once again saying Gojo can win. And this is the second time in this chapter that it's been said. And I can't lie, it's starting to send alarm bells ringing for me. You can't just keep saying that Gojo is going to win because you're just jinxing the man at this point here. But Gojo carries on the barrage of attacks, punching Sukuna into a lamppost and then activating his domain again. And Yuta and Higuruma both notice that this domain is 0.01 seconds faster than Sukuna's domain activation right here. And Gojo was able to do this because Sukuna is healing the damage that Gojo gave him in the previous domain. But real quick, I do want to talk about Yuta right here because I've been seeing a lot of fraud allegations, like I said in the beginning of the video here. It's been going around like crazy and everyone is getting those allegations. And even Yuta is catching a bunch of strays and he's just a spectator right now. He's not even involved. So I gotta step up and defend my mans here. Yuta at multiple points in this fight has been able to explain certain things that have happened and has even caught multiple details that no one else has. And yes, this dude is nervous, but that is incredibly in character for him. We see him nervous all the time. He was nervous throughout the entirety of the Jujutsu Kaisen 0 film, and he's just a nervous dude in general. But let's not forget, my brother came out on top in the 3-for-all battle in Sendai, and when it comes to being a vicious animal, we even saw him biting a motherfucker's face off. I'm saying is my man Yuta is a nervous wreck, but when it comes down to it, he can throw hands. And right now, he's watching and learning from Sukuna and Gojo, and I'm saying don't be surprised when Yuta emulates Gojo's RCT for his own technique, basically removing that 5-minute limiter from Rika. That boy will be a serious problem if that happens. But we do get this panel of Gojo staring down Sukuna as the unlimited void hits Sukuna, rendering him immobile, and Gojo punches a hole into Sukuna once again, sending him flying back, and the shrine then starts to collapse behind him, meaning Sukuna is now taking the full brunt of unlimited void for however many seconds that this may be. But Gojo then starts to say, not yet. Crushing your heart was the bare minimum, meaning Gojo in that previous attack just crushed Sukuna's heart, and he confirms it here and there, and is then rushing in to take Sukuna's lungs and his liver, saying, I will bring you closer to death than Yuji was at the detention center, which is a callback to Yuji having his heart taken hostage by Sukuna way back when. But this is where Gege just drops us all on our head again, and Sukuna flips the tables and summons the Mahoraga here, and we get to see the Mahoraga wheel turning. And I want to address how Sukuna did this. We already saw at the end of the last chapter that the wheel was in play and it adapted to something, but we do not know what that is yet. But as for how Sukuna summoned the Mahoraga into this, I think he did this with his thoughts. We know that when you are in the unlimited void, you are paralyzed completely. However, for a small time, you can still think, and we know this because we saw Jogo thinking about what the fuck was going on when he first got caught in this domain expansion way back when. As for how Sukuna got the Mahoraga into the domain, I would say that this would be the same way he did it in the fight against Yorozu. He used and summoned the Mahoraga, and when he did that, he is talking about taking it for a test drive, and then summons the wheel, the Dharma Chakra wheel, and then later switches out via the shadows while inside of the domain. And we know Sukuna only needs to do or see something once to matter it just as much as Gojo can. But we now see Gojo standing face to face with the Mahoraga inside of the domain expansion, and genuinely, he looks panicked. He genuinely looks panicked, staring this motherfucker down. But he goes on to say how he hasn't had time to adapt to unlimited void, so I'll destroy it in one shot, and charges up a red blast. But the Mahoraga uses the sword of extermination to destroy the domain's floor in the same way it broke the perfect sphere in Yorozu's domain. Meaning the Mahoraga adapted super fast, and now this could be a possible application of Sukuna, but I'll get into this in a second. But we see Gojo and the Mahoraga now standing face to face as the domain crumbles, and I want to point out now right now that Gojo is in trouble. He's in shambles right now. He's in a very bad situation. I'll explain it all right now. But also at the same time, so is Sukuna. So let me just break all of this down, what's going on in this chapter, because there's a lot of details that you may not have missed and not thought of. But Gojo crushed Sukuna's heart, and Sukuna was also hit with unlimited void, meaning right now Sukuna is physically and mentally weakened from Gojo's attacks, and we know Sukuna can live without a heart. We've seen him do it. He can keep his vessel alive without a heart. We saw him do it with Yuji when he was only at like 3 fingers, so it's almost certainly confirmed that he can do it at the same point right now. But the difference between now and then is that back then he could have used RCT to keep himself going, but right now his brain is fried from the unlimited void. He's completely paralyzed, so he can't activate RCT to heal his heart, which leaves a possible opening for our boy Megami to take control. And I also want to point out that Sukuna is also nowhere to be seen after the summoning of Mahoraga, and I would genuinely be willing to bet that this man sunk into the shadows the exact same way Megami did it a while back when he was infiltrating Hakari's base, and that's where he is right now. He's recuperating and recovering and letting Mahoraga take a 1v1 against Gojo. However, on the flip side of this, we have Gojo, whose domain has now just been shattered and will now be facing Chaos Technique Burnout while fighting against the Mahoraga. Now, during these past 2 chapters, we've seen that wheel spin twice. We saw it once at the end of the last chapter and another at the point of the summoning during the domain. However, it's possible the Mahoraga is adapted to a lot more than just the domain. During the fight inside of the domain, Gojo doesn't use infinity, and we know this because we can see the attacks Gojo is hitting and making contact with Sukuna, and also Sukuna doesn't get a chance to use domain amplification, meaning Mahoraga theoretically can't adapt to that. But we see Gojo using applications of blue to throw Sukuna about, meaning Mahoraga could have adapted to that variation of the technique. And then there is also the possible use that Gojo did use red within the domain to damage Sukuna's face, which means Mahoraga might have adapted to that also. Again, I do want to point out, we didn't see the wheel turn for any of these things, so this is unconfirmed, but again, something like this happened in the Sukuna vs Yorozu fight, where Sukuna just simply said, I've adapted to it all. So Gojo right now is in a bit of a pickle for the next chapter. In best case scenario, he's going to have to fight on the back foot while using RCT to heal his cursed technique, and then hopefully hollow purples the Mahoraga and get it out of there, and that is at the best case scenario right now. When I really looked into it, at first I wasn't convinced Mahoraga was adapted to anything, but right now it's not looking good for our man Gojo, which is one of my worst fears combined. I've said this so many times. Sukuna's use of the Dharma Chakra wheel was the big problem here, not the Mahoraga itself. The Mahoraga adaptability can be overwhelmed, whereas Sukuna could simply use himself as a straw man to take all of the attacks that Gojo has and then have the Mahoraga adapt in the background without taking any damage at all, so he turns up in the battle at the later points completely fresh. But there's then also that point of the nosebleed, which happened at the back of the last chapter, which could be a red herring. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I cannot see JJK drawing that nosebleed as a cliffhanger and then also having Yuta pointing it out and then having it be nothing. Well, I also want to say these fraudulent allegations from Sukuna is crazy. I understand that they are memes, but also at the same time, you have to understand Sukuna's a villain. He's going to act like a villain. I've even seen Sukuna fans saying Sukuna's a fraud, but I just want to point out here that Sukuna used emotional manipulation to survive an attack from Angel and Hana, and he did that to survive. Up until that point, that dude was about to be obliterated. The series could have ended there and then, but he used emotional manipulation to survive that attack. So I think, if you have not been paying attention to the series, I think you're out of your goddamn mind if you thought he wasn't going to use the 10 shadows at any given point. I mean, I did have theories at one point that it could have been a Pride issue, or maybe even the possibility that I might not have been able to use them all after sinking Megami's soul completely. But it seems that is not the case. But that is everything from me. Again, we are on a break next chapter, but I know when JJK comes back, we are just going to be eating good. But if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe. Again, I want to see the challenge. I want to see if you guys can get me to 14k off of this video. That's my challenge from me to you as the community. But as always, I will catch you guys all in the next one. Much love, big kisses, peace.